Hi guys, welcome down to Quest Golf Studio here with Rick Shiels, and I'm going to do Phil Mickelson's golf clubs for the Open. As much as we can't quite call them the winning golf clubs, Henrik Stenson's are available there, it'd be cruel not to include Phil Mickelson in this because he played sensational. And across the last 145 Opens, with the score that he shot, he would have won 140 of them. That's how good he played. He was so far ahead of third place. I think he was 11 shots ahead of third place, and only to lose or miss out at the Open Championship, the Claret Jug, to an incredible Henrik Stenson. So we're going to do his golf clubs. Callaway are going to be loving this. I'm sure the sales of Callaway clubs are going to go through the roof after they've had the top two players. And they won the Masters as well with Danny Willett. So it's been a good year so far. Let's jump straight into the driver for Phil Mickelson. So Phil Mickelson uses the Callaway XR Sub-Zero, a driver that I reviewed only a month or so ago, quite a limited edition of drivers. It's the driver that is designed to be lowest of low spins. Apparently it has the weight in the back, so it's a slightly more forgiving setting than the weight in the forward, but it is a smaller head compared to the other XR models. It has the gloss finish instead of the matte look, where Henrik was using the XR16, the normal one. Phil Mickelson was using the XR16 Sub-Zero. He's got it in 8.5 degrees and a slightly longer shaft than Henrik in 45.5. I don't think Phil hit the driver that much at the Open Championship. In fact, he didn't, because his driving distance was only averaging at 275. That was all of his tee shots on par 4. So he was playing, or par 4s and par 5s, so he was playing a little bit more conservatively. I know his driver gets him into a little bit of trouble sometimes. He hit good percentage of the fairways on 3 of the days, over 70% of fairways, which is very healthy. But you know, he's a good driver of the golf ball, but he's more suited to big open fairways where he really had to control his ball flight this week, and he did an incredible job doing that. So moving into 3-wood, and Phil uses the Callaway XR16 Pro. I'll be glad to say I'm using the same 3-wood as well. The XR16 Pro is a fantastic 3-wood, lovely shallow face. I love the finish of it. Phil Mickelson's using it in a 13 degree, which is quite a strong 3-wood. Again, it was a club that he used a lot at the Open, a lot, because again, the bunkers come into play at around that kind of 290 to 320 yards around Royal Troon. So he had to play the 3-wood short of a lot of that trouble, and he did perfectly. Rips his 3-wood, great player with that. I know he's got a load of weights and lead tape and stuff attached to it, but he just kills it. He's a very educated player when it comes to his equipment. He likes to adjust and tweak things to suit his game. So moving into irons, and Phil Mickelson uses the Forged X 2013 model Callaway irons. He had the 2-iron and then the 4 to pitching wedge. A bit like Henrik Stenson, these are older versions. They're old irons. Top players don't seem to change their irons quite as much as they may do their drivers. So both using brand new drivers, but sticking with more familiar features in their irons. And we see that a lot against a lot of fantastic players. Rory McIlroy still using old irons. Dustin Johnson still using old irons. Obviously Henrik and Phil still using quite old irons. And they must just like the feel. The technology doesn't change that much in that bladed kind of looking iron. So there's not going to be a load of things that change. He was hitting some great golf shots. Not as high a percentage of greens in regulation as Henrik. On the first day, he did hit 88% of greens in regulation and then putted fantastic. But Phil is that type of player that we all know and love, that he is just a magician around the green. So he doesn't really worry too much if he does miss a green. He can get up and down from near enough anywhere. So his iron game was on point, but potentially not quite as good as Henrik's. He had to make a lot more up and downs this week. So moving into his wedges, and he uses wedges that have been absolutely made for him. So he works with Roger Cleveland, who now works for Callaway, and they made Callaway's Mack Daddy PM grind, the PM being Phil Mickelson grind wedges. The PM grind are the massive faced wedges where grooves are all the way from the heel to the toe, with a huge toe kind of real estate on the club. I had the pleasure to speaking with Roger Cleveland back in January in Orlando, and he was telling me the story about these PM grinds, about the idea that Phil wanted to be able to manipulate the loft to the most extreme factors. And he said to Roger, can I make a club that actually has grooves all the way to the end? And there was no legal stipulation with that. So Roger Cleveland actually made this prototype for Phil with extra, almost put 2 golf clubs together welded them together and said, there you go, how does that look? And he went, I love it, I love it. So now he uses it, and these are clubs now that are actually being produced by Callaway. He uses the 56, the 60 and a 64-degree wedge. And in that PM grind, because the grooves are so much towards the toe, once he opens that face, I mean, God knows what number he can open that face to, but it must be way into the 70 degrees of loft that he can create that wedge into. This gives him all the tools around the green to be the best wedge player that we've probably ever seen in any of our lifetimes, because he is absolutely a magician. If you've never seen the clips of him flopping it over bunkers, over his head and over Roger Cleveland, then it's worth checking out on YouTube. I might put a link up here in the corner. Okay, so moving into the flat stick again, Phil Mickelson has been famous for his putting. He uses the Odyssey number 9 putter in a super stroke grip with his manipulated claw grip, something that's quite new for Phil Mickelson. I use the claw grip. I really like the feel of it, the fact that it doesn't really involve the bottom hand too much. I find it tricky on long putts, but on short putts for it to be amazing. Phil Mickelson, over the 4 days, never had more than 30 putts. His most putts on one day was 29, and the least putts he had one day was 26. That is just phenomenal, because Royal Troon greens, some of them were massive, some of them were really small, such as the 8th. Even the 8th hole, he went birdie, 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 par. In fact, how he didn't birdie on the last day was quite an astonishing feat, because I think that was quite a turning point in the whole match there, call it a match, between the two players. When Henrik Stenson was on the 8th and he held his birdie putt, he was quite a bit further away than Phil Mickelson, and then Phil, after birding it all 3 days in a row, just didn't quite get the read correct on that putt, left it on the high side, and therefore that made a big swing in the whole turnout of the tournament, I feel. But he puts great. He's very, very good at putting. I always remember a clip of him using a mirrored faced putter and a laser on the wall to make sure that his putter face was perfectly straight. Great putter, one of the best we've ever seen. So the last thing he uses in his bag is the golf ball. He uses the Callaway Chrome soft ball, the 2016 model. Great ball, very similar to the Pro V in many respects. It's soft, it's durable, it's in that kind of marketplace. That's it. I felt like it would be too unfair not to do a Phil Mickelson golf bag video today, because he was part of the show. You know, he was part of the Open Championship at Royal Troon. He was part of the probably one of the most historic Opens that we're ever going to see. You know, loads of comparisons this today and this weekend of the duel in the sun of Nicklaus and Watson at Turnberry in '77. I unfortunately wasn't around for that, so I never got to see that. I've obviously seen highlights since, but this was the modern day duel in the sun. Even the sun came out. I think it was better. I think the golf that was played yesterday and the fact that those two players were so far ahead of everybody else was quite astonishing. It almost turned into a little bit of a match play duel towards the end. It was awesome. I want to thank Henrik Stenson, Phil Mickelson, for the golfing world, on behalf of the golfing world, for putting on such a spectacular show. Sports fans around the world would have loved that yesterday, and it only does golf the world of good. It gets more people involved in watching golf, and the fact that it's not a fuddy-duddy sport that's played with daft trousers on and daft hats. It's actually a real Titanic showpiece event where you get two of the best players that's ever lived competing against each other on the biggest stage. It was class. Guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please click up the thumbs up on the video. You can comment below. Do you think it's better than the duel in the sun with Nicklaus and Watson? Love to hear your thoughts around that. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new to my channel. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you soon. Well done, guys. That was just nailed it. Awesome.